Happy Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, and he is back. Damian Mitchell here with you as we get you set for, I guess, kind of a week off in the world of college football, but getting you set for now the first round of the college football playoff is what we will set our sights on, as those games will be getting underway. Alabama and Oklahoma next Friday, and then the other three games next Saturday. So we've got a little bit of time for these teams as they kind of try to heal up and get over some of the lumps of the season and get prepared for winner take all scenarios in the college football playoff. We'll have a lot of time to get into those games more specifically, and of course we'll talk a lot about Alabama and Oklahoma in that rematch, the third time that they will face off in the last 13 months or so. But we've got a lot going on today. We've still got some coaching changes going on in the college football world. We've got, again, we got to hear from Alex Golesh yesterday from the Auburn side of things. Always good to hear from him and kind of get his vision for the future of the program. But we've also got a lot of changes with players entering the portal and things like that. So we'll tell you the latest on what's going on with Alex Golesh and his staff, as well as the roster and some names that you need to know that will not be members of the Auburn Tigers anymore next season. But before we get into all of that, I did want to kind of go back because I know Damian's been out the last couple of days, and so he wasn't here yesterday or Friday. So, I guess when we left off, we, we're talking about the conference championship games and what your thoughts were going to be for Alabama and Georgia. And we, kind of had the feeling that regardless of what happened, Alabama was going to find their way in. But, I think a lot of us, maybe not, not like, oh, Alabama's definitely going to win, but you felt like, oh, it's probably a coin flip game. Like, all right, based on, the past, you would have probably picked Alabama if it was a coin flip and you had to, lean one way or the other just because of their track record against Kirby and against Georgia in particular. But them being blown out and still getting in, I think was a surprise to a lot of people. So I just wanted to get your thoughts, Damian, on kind of everything that happened over the weekend with the SEC championship. Alabama loses by 21. They look pretty bad offensively, especially in the first half. Kind of got something going in the fourth quarter, but by then it was too late. But maybe that was enough, I guess, to convince the committee to keep them there at number 9. So what were your thoughts kind of on that game and then what happened on Sunday with Alabama and Miami making the college football playoff while Notre Dame, after being in the entire time ahead of Miami the last week of the season, the committee finally goes, you know what? We're going to honor that head-to-head and leave Notre Dame on the outside looking in.
It was fun, man. I wasn't expecting Alabama to look the way that they did. I think it was shocking the performance it was to me, because I figured, that Alabama's starting to turn the corner, but some of the question marks that we were having offensively really started to show when you went against a quality opponent in the likes of Georgia. And shout out to Georgia too. When they smelled blood, like they went in, like it really felt like it was their national championship game. By the way they were playing, and then special teams made a big play, and they kind of set the tone of how that game was going to go. And that was Saturday. Sunday was a little different. It was a little different. We're sitting there watching the final college football college football rankings, and seeing how it all played out. Listen, I think the committee has been a unique one this past season. I came away thinking, all right, you put Alabama in, understandably so, because of the resume that they have. Everybody talks about, oh, well, they lost to Florida State, lost to Oklahoma, and then they just lost the SEC championship.
Well, they played 13 games, not 4.
Right. And people tend to forget they also won some ranked matchups as well. Went to a ranked Missouri team, beat them on the road, beat Tennessee. They also beat Georgia head-to-head in the beginning of the season I'm not going to say it didn't matter, but when it mattered a lot. It mattered a lot that they had up until Indiana knocked off Ohio State, they had the best win in college football.
That win's the reason they're in the playoff.
You feel me? So it's, okay, well, you can be upset of how the last thing that you saw on the field for Alabama. Yeah, you can be upset about how they performed. But when it comes down to it, it's kind of hard not to say that they're not one of the 12 best teams in college football. Now the Notre Dame thing, it was puzzling to the fact that they took it to the final rankings in order to honor that head-to-head with Miami. And deservedly so. I can understand Notre Dame fans were passionate and very upset. But now it comes into the question of, you know what? If y'all have been in a conference and seeing what the results were between Duke and Virginia, just imagine if Notre Dame was in the ACC. They would have mopped the floor with either one of those teams in the ACC championship. Then there wouldn't be no question mark of them getting into the college football playoff. But this is the schedule that you decide to go out there and play. Not to say that you didn't go out there and handle your business, but we know against two teams that are in the playoffs right now, you're 0-2 against them. Yeah, they were close, but you weren't on the winning side of those. And when these started to match up wins across the board against, pretty much the two lost teams that they were discussing, you had no argument because y'all were playing the likes of, Stanford and all those teams. So I understand you could be frustrated that it went all the way to the last week of the season, and when it mattered the most, your name wasn't called. But you kind of controlled a lot of this. If you could put your pride to the side, join a conference, maybe we could have a different discussion. But I think the bigger issue was them opting out of the bowl game. Like that was a word that you can't say on air. But that was just a very cowardly move because one, you're trying to say you're sticking the middle finger up to the committee. Well, you know what could really actually benefit your argument and people would actually entertain what you talk about is if you go out to your bowl game and beat whoever it is by 65 points.
I was about to say Georgia went and did that against Florida State a couple years ago.
Beat the brakes off of them.
I mean, Alabama, they lost, but, they wouldn't play a bowl game last year. They were the first team out.
Yeah, right. And if your players opt out, so be it. It is what it is. But to me, it's kind of a gut punch because I think Marcus Freeman, at least from what I've seen from him over the years as the head coach, like he's one of those guys that it don't matter. Line the ball up. It is what it is. We can't control what has happened. Well, technically you could because you could win those ball games. But the next opponent up is going to feel our wrath. Like that's the kind of mindset I would have had. But Notre Dame then opting out of the bowl game, and it's just a coward's way to look at it because, man, okay, you got screwed over. So be it. You know what? Make everybody else feel bad or make the committee feel bad for not putting you in by actually taking pride in playing in your bowl game and beating that next opponent by 50 points. Then it's, okay, well, yeah, maybe we screwed that Notre Dame team over. Well, now it's, all right, it was basically playoffs or bust. And you didn't make the college football playoffs, but you still had something to prove to wrap up the season. So it's kind of just you end on a sour note. And if you're kind of one of those sophomore freshmen that don't really play much, okay, tell me who's opting out, and this is my time and my opportunity to show you that I can play at a high level, and let's prepare for the future. But they decided to opt out of the bowl game because they were butthurt, and it's just soft.
Well, and I've seen a lot of people kind of like what you were saying, have the attitude of, oh, well, basically along the lines of, well, Alabama better beat Oklahoma, otherwise, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do to Notre Dame fans in the sense of, if Alabama doesn't go and light it up in the playoffs, they're looking at it as, well, see, there you go, we told you so, we should have been the team that's in. But you don't really get the opportunity to do that when you don't play in a bowl game, like Damian is saying, and go out and dominate your competition, and that's how you send a message, right? That's what Georgia did 2 years ago when they got knocked out by Alabama in the SEC title game. They went and absolutely obliterated Florida State. You go back 3 years ago, Alabama got left out of the playoff for TCU, who got obliterated by Georgia National Championship game. But Alabama felt like maybe TCU deserved it, but Alabama was the better team. What did they do? They went and blew out a Kansas State team that beat TCU for a conference championship game and said, oh, yeah, that team you were comparing us to, we just beat the team that beat them by 30. So probably tells you that we're a little better than they are. It didn't mean anything, right? But you sent the message, right? The message was heard. And, yeah, I don't want to hear any of that crap from Notre Dame fans because you had an opportunity to do that and you threw it away. I will also say, and I don't know this for sure, and how their decision-making process goes to go. I'm going to choose just based on how Pete Bavacqua, who's the AD, who's having a press conference in a handful of hours, actually, which will probably be very interesting. I'm going to give Marcus Freeman the benefit of the doubt and hope that this is not something he wants to do because this seems like something, if you've heard anything the AD from Notre Dame has said in the last 48 hours, it seems pretty clear to me that he was probably the one that said, we're doing this. This isn't a discussion. This is what we're doing. We're going to stick it to the man. And they think that they're sticking it to the man, and really no one's going to care. But whatever helps them sleep at night. It's a unique situation. But I am choosing to give Marcus Freeman the benefit of the doubt and believe that he's not that soft, because he doesn't seem that way, and I could be totally wrong, but this seems like a decision that was at least heavily influenced by the athletic director at Notre Dame and not so much Marcus Freeman. But yeah, it's everything you said. I stand by 100%. So it is what it is. They've shown their true colors. Join a conference. Maybe this morning, that's what the announcement's going to be. Hey, we're mad at the ACC, so, we're opening up discussions with the Big Ten and the SEC. Make us your best all. Whatever. I don't know. So we'll see what kind of the future holds there. But I do know this. The next time we see Notre Dame, it'll be next year. And real quick, this is their schedule for 2026 while they're going to prepare for another playoff run. Wisconsin, Rice, Michigan State, Purdue, North Carolina, Navy, Boston College, Miami, SMU, Stanford, Syracuse, and USC. So that to me tells me they're going to play, I'll give SMU some credit, 3 teams with a pulse next year. What a brutal schedule. I hope they can survive.
It just seems so daunting.
It's absolutely embarrassing. But whatever. I'm tired of talking about Notre Dame for now. They've gotten their moment in the sun. And not going to get any sympathy here on this show. I will tell you that much. But just wanted to get Damien's thoughts on that since he's been out the last couple of days. The big topic there. And, of course, we'll talk more about the college football playoff and all of those matchups coming up here over the next week and a half. But quickly did want to mention last night, Monday Night Football, the Chargers, they get a win in overtime over the Eagles. It was a good game, I guess, in the sense that it was competitive, but it was a very sloppy game. So you had 8 total turnovers on the night, 4 interceptions by Jalen Hurts. You had one play where he threw an interception, the Chargers fumbled it, then Jalen Hurts recovered it, then he fumbled it right back to the Chargers. So you had 3 turnovers on one play last night, which I couldn't remember the last time I've seen that. But it was a sloppy game. But, you got to give credit to the Chargers. They found a way to win at the end. Cameron Dicker hit 5 field goals for them. And that was ultimately, what kind of led the charge there for them. But, a rough one for the Eagles, man. They've lost 3 games in a row now. Jalen Hurts, just a really, really rough night for him. Saquon actually was nice, 122 yards on the ground. A.J. Brown had 100 yards on 6 catches. Offensively, they outgained the Chargers by almost 100, but those 5 turnovers that they had certainly didn't do them any favors. So the Chargers are now 9-4. Jim Harbaugh very fired up after the game as they stay right in the thick of things in the AFC playoff race, and the Eagles keep on slipping just a little bit, and I don't know if the Cowboys can catch them, but they're certainly making it a little bit more interesting. So that's what was going on last night for a little bit of Monday Night Football action there as the Chargers take down the Eagles 22-19 in overtime. But how about, we don't have any games going on this weekend, but there's a pretty important trophy ceremony going on this week. And of course, that would be the Heisman Trophy. Maybe not any big surprises here, but we do know now the 4 Heisman finalists, the award given out on Saturday. Who do we think is going to win? Who do we think should win it? A little bit of Heisman talk coming up next here on JOX. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Tuesday. Appreciate you tuning us in each and every morning here on Jocks. We will be with you until 7 o'clock when we will hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Then coming up from 10 to 2 today, three-man front out at Social Taco in Homewood. And today is our Christmas party out at Social Taco. So we hope you can come and join us today between 10 and 2. And then, of course, some guy named Paul Feinbaum will be with you from 2 to 6. I heard that he's pretty good. I will say his show yesterday.
Oh, it was entertaining. It was entertaining.
These are the days that we live for. These are the days that we live for. But I told you the Heisman Trophy finalists have been officially announced. The ceremony will be on Saturday, so that's when we will find out who is named the best player in college football for the 2025 season. I already know who I would vote for. I don't have a vote, but if I did, I absolutely know who I would vote for, and I think a lot of you would probably be on a similar page. But if you missed it, the four finalists officially are three quarterbacks and a running back. So you've got Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt, Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, Julian Sayin from Ohio State, and then Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love. Maybe they'll give it to him as consolation prize since they got left out of the playoff. But those are your four Heisman finalists. That is exactly who I would have put in there. If you had asked me, who do you think the four finalists should be? That would have been my exact list. I really don't think you could go wrong with either of these guys. They've all been spectacular. I think Julian Sayin, right, you would maybe say he's benefited the most in terms of the talent that's around him, but still being a first-year starter, really, really impressive what he's been able to do. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza, I don't think any of us saw this coming when he transferred to Indiana from Cal. You knew he was pretty good, right? We saw him beat Auburn, right? Okay, he's pretty solid quarterback, but not like future first-round pick, maybe number one overall pick type of player, which is what he's turned into at Indiana this year. Diego Pavia speaks for himself. He's been spectacular the last 2 years in Nashville. And then Jeremiah Love, for my money, the best running back in college football right now, and somebody else that very well may be a first-round pick come April. So I would just tell you right now, if I had a vote, personally, I'm giving it to Diego Pavia. I understand the argument, and we kind of talked about it last week, right, of, best or most talented player versus most valuable player. And, in a situation like this, I think, for me personally, I think it should come down to either Mendoza or Pavia, because I think those are the biggest combination of best players with also they are more valuable to their team in the sense of Indiana's the number one team in the country. Where would they be without Fernando Mendoza? Just like with Vanderbilt. I know they missed the playoff. If Vanderbilt, they won 10 games this year. If they don't have Diego Pavia, they're probably a 7-5 football team. So it'd be hard for me not to look at those two guys as the two favorites. And I don't know how you feel about it, Damian. I would personally go Pavia. Maybe that's a little SEC bias here, but it may be a little bit, it's just how good the story is. But he has been so good. And when you look at his numbers and just knowing what he did in the SEC at a program like Vanderbilt, it's hard to look away from that.
Yeah, and again, I think Jeremiah Love is the best player in college football. And I guess because of the fact that this year's Heisman race, and like we talked about it last week, it doesn't feel like anybody's truly just separated themselves as, yep, he's definitively that dude, he's that guy. But the impact that they have on games and on the field can't be denied. Like Fernando Mendoza, like Diego Pavia, and even Julian Sayin. I think when we look at, I think Julian Sayin is kind of on the outside looking in because of the fact that every Ohio State quarterback typically just does well in this system. They're up until the conference championship game, they were the number one team in the nation. Mm-hmm. But we also saw games where Julian Sayin throws for like 95 yards. And it's kind of, all right, well, when we look at just the consistency overall, the one person that we can definitively say has been that consistent is Diego Pavia. Like, you could look at every single game pretty much. If he's not on that field for Vanderbilt, it's not even a ball game. Mm-hmm. So I think when you look at overall impact, it's hard not to deny that Diego Pavia has been one of the most impactful players in college football. And it's just it's been one of those years where you kind of look back and it's, okay, the Vanderbilt quarterback and the Indiana quarterback are in the same conversation with a Notre Dame running back and an Ohio State quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at what they've done for their teams, it's okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now.
Well, that's why we're talking about these teams as playoff contenders
Right.
or even the number one pick because of how good the quarterbacks are.
Yeah, and it's just a unique year this year.
Yeah.
But I do think, again, my vote, I would give it to Jeremiah Love because I do think that he is the best player in college football, just as far as, and his impact is definitely there.
Yeah.
But he's a running back because if you go back to last season, if Ashton Jeanty can go out there and run for almost 8,000 yards and he didn't get it, sorry, Jeremiah. Like, we appreciate you coming, but it's probably not going to be your award to get.
Yeah, probably not. And I mean, I would have voted for Jeanty last year. I mean, he was insane, but I get why it's hard in a year where you have good quarterback competition for any other position to win it. I think we all know, right? You go back, it's been very few and far between when you've had your Derrick Henrys or Devontae Smith. That doesn't happen very often anymore. So we'll see how it all goes down on Saturday. But Fernando Mendoza, Diego Pavia, Jeremiah Love, and Julian Sayin there are your 4 Heisman Trophy finalists. Will be very interesting to see. I will say, I think the one thing, if let's say Mendoza gets the nod over Pavia, I do think the one strong argument you have there is as good as Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt have been, they don't have that marquee win like Indiana has now with both Oregon and Ohio State. And I think that ultimately will probably be what pushes him ahead. So I would say I expect that Mendoza will win it, but we will see on Saturday once all of that becomes official. Now just a little bit of more news around the college football world to get to here quickly before we move on and talk a little bit about the Auburn Tigers. We did have some news in the assistant coaching world, I guess, really, in the SEC yesterday. As South Carolina, they announced that they have hired Kendall Briles from TCU to be their next offensive coordinator. We all know they were bad. All right, they were really, really bad. Had to fire Mike Shula in the middle of the season, later in the later parts of the season. And now they look to the Big 12 for their next offensive guy. So TCU was 4th in the Big 12 in offense this year. They were behind Texas Tech, Baylor, and one other team. I'm trying to remember who it was. But they're top 4 offense in the Big 12 this year. We'll see how that translates to the SEC. South Carolina, they finished 15th in total offense and 14th in scoring offense in the SEC this year. Thanks to LSU, they were not last in a lot of those categories. So a rough year for South Carolina, to say the least. But if they're able to keep Lenore Sellers for one more year, Kendall Briles certainly has a very talented quarterback for him to work with there at South Carolina. And then for Damian's former love, the Tennessee Volunteers, a coach that, as recently as a year or two ago, I thought was doing a really nice job, but it just all kind of fell apart this year. But that's Tennessee defensive coordinator Tim Banks. He has been fired, according to reports that were coming out of the program yesterday. So he had been the DC there since 2021. You look at those last couple of years, like they've had some really nice defenses. Last year's defense was really good there in Knoxville, but this year it was not. They were 14th in the SEC in both total defense and scoring defense. They were giving up almost 30 points a game this year. Really, really ugly for them, and I think they identified that as maybe the reason that I don't think that Vanderbilt game at the end of the year helped his argument at all, but I think they're, kind of look around and going, as bad as we might have thought this year could have been when Nico left and all that drama, kind of disappointing to think that, man, if that defense was a little bit better, maybe we beat Georgia earlier in the year. Maybe we're winning some of these games, and we're a team that's in the college football playoff. So a little bit of a shakeup there for Rocky Top.
Yeah, and you see the impact of not having those dudes on defense. Like, you don't have
James Smith's pretty good, or James Pierce, yeah.
yeah. When James Pierce is gone, and he kind of hides a lot of the, I guess you'd say, deficiencies that you have on the defensive side. And, yeah, it was just kind of one of those years where it kind of went back to bend but don't break on the defensive side of the ball. They weren't as
unfortunately,
dominant.
they broke a lot, yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing that we saw was the Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia's, Diego Pavia's Heisman game, essentially. Like, he was single-handedly put that team on his back in Neyland. But like you said, to that point, Tim Banks, it's not that nobody necessarily thinks he's a bad defensive coordinator. It's just kind of this year just wasn't his year. So it's gonna be different. I'm interested to see where he lands because a lot of people, and just in the coaching ranks, they really do like what he does defensively. So I'm assuming that he'll still be in a good job. But I do think that that Kendall Briles hire in South Carolina, it, if you're and you see Kendall Briles come in, yeah, you may have dreams of making it to the NFL, and we know the raw talent that you are. But even I think that you could probably unlock a little bit more. Now you're gonna need some help because you can't do it by yourself. But as far as schematics and just what Kendall Briles' offense possesses, like a lot of the things that are going to be on full display for Lenoris moving forward, it could work. It could be one of those things that, okay, you for your last and final hoorah, this is what you're gonna get, and you get an offensive guy. You get a guy that just, I mean, his offenses produce numbers. No matter how how they have to do it, whether it's running the football, throwing the ball, and one of the things that you saw with Lenore Sellers was kind of the accuracy issues. He is a raw quarterback, like superior athlete, but just raw as far as the mechanics and some of the things that you want out of the quarterback position. But I do think Kendall Briles can make the best out of it. So it's going to be a trying time for Shane Beamer too, because realistically, where are you now? Because this time last year, we were like, man, South Carolina, they caught heat right at the right time. Had they not had those earlier losses, there's no telling what could have been. And then this past year was kind of just a gut punch of, man, this ain't what we thought it was. You're not sneaking up on anybody anymore. Now you got to go toe for toe, and you couldn't necessarily hang because your offense was holding you back pretty much.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And if you're a South Carolina fan, you can feel good knowing that he does have SEC experience. Obviously, remember him at Arkansas. That's where he was before TCU. So coming back to the SEC is one Kendall Briles, and we will see what direction Tennessee goes as they try to shore up that defense and return to the college football playoff conversation next season. But let's turn the page away from some of these other teams. Let's look at Auburn, because we got to hear from Alex Golish yesterday talking about some of the staff changes, his philosophy on filling out the roster. And speaking of the roster, some players entering the transfer portal. So we'll give you all the latest news on Auburn, what's going on with the Auburn offseason, and Alex Golish. That's next here on JOX. 6:35 here on your Tuesday morning. Appreciate you joining us here on Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you as the college football conversation rolls along on your Tuesday morning. Let's talk about the Auburn Tigers here for a few minutes. Get you up to date what's going on the plains of Auburn, because we did get to hear, I guess, officially the first, I'm going to call yesterday the first real press conference we got from Alex Golesh, right? Because I know he hasn't been there very long, but he's kind of getting his bearings. He's filling out his staff. He's having conversations with all of the players about their future. And yesterday it felt like, all right, this is me, Alex Golesh, not having to introduce myself, not having to explain myself to anybody. This is my philosophy. This is how I expect things to be done, and this is how we're going to get Auburn back to their winning ways. And I think, he sounded very confident yesterday. I know some people were, he's kind of long-winded, but I think he really just wanted to explain. And again, I think he understands that there's probably a lot of people that are going, all right, this guy from the American Conference in South Florida coming to the SEC. It's the same thing we heard with Brian Harsin, the same thing with Kalen DeBoer. Granted, it was true about Brian Harsin, but it's the idea of, well, that's great, but can they recruit in the SEC? Because it's different in the SEC. Okay, well, we've seen Kalen DeBoer have a lot of success with that. Now we're going to see if Alex Golesh can do the same thing, but he at least seems to have the right mentality about it going into it. And I think, honestly, my favorite probably answer of the day was somebody asked him, so, is your expectation to have top 10 recruiting classes at Auburn? And his response was, I would think that this would correlate with that, but we are going to go, first off, we're going to focus on retaining talent here in the state of Alabama. And if there are positions that we don't feel we can get the good enough talent in the state, then we're going to go national and we're going to bring that talent into Auburn. But we're also going to make sure that it's guys that fit the culture, but it's guys that fit the scheme and what they want to do. And if that means that you're maybe a 3-star guy, but they identify you as someone that's going to be a better fit, they're going for you. And, again, that's the right mentality to have. We get so obsessed with these numbers. A lot of these things don't matter. Now, is it nice? I'm not saying it's not good to have good recruiting classes, but obviously it's not the end-all be-all, certainly not today. And I think we all agree that you want kids that you can develop, kids that want to be in your program, and kids that fit what you're trying to accomplish offensively and defensively. And, you'll take the development side of it because these kids will come along. So I thought he did a really good job yesterday, kind of laying the groundwork, laying the plan down, the vision for building this roster at Auburn. He also officially made some coaching hires that we had already kind of heard about. Obviously, DJ Durkin was one of them. He was officially announced as the defensive coordinator. You also have Joel Gordon, who will serve as the offensive coordinator, and he will work alongside Alex Golesh, obviously, but also Cody Burns, who was the co-OC at USF alongside him. So he's going to come over and join Alex Golesh on the plains of Auburn. He also brought over Tyler Hood. I don't know if it's Hudenick or Huden. He is going to be the new offensive line coach for Auburn. He played offensive line at UCF, worked for a couple of years under Golesh at Tennessee, so he's been in the SEC as well. And then he also announced that Brad Wilson will be on staff as a defensive assistant, and then Andrew Warsaw is his general manager, and he kind of talked a little bit about how he's essentially his right-hand man, and we know how important that position has now gotten in the college ranks. But again, I think all in all, you look at what was announced yesterday, just the way that he carried himself in the press conference, thought that Alex Golesh did a really, really good job. But of course, words mean nothing without action. I definitely think that he will take the appropriate action and have this team in a much more competitive position next year. But we will just have to wait and see. And part of that day will come down to the roster and the players that they have available. And quickly, we have had some new players enter the portal. So right now, at my last count, there are 7 players from Auburn that have already entered the transfer or have announced that they are intending to enter the portal once it opens. I know this one is going to really break your heart and come as a huge shock to you, Damian, but it was announced over the weekend that Jackson Arnold is expected to enter the transfer portal.
What part of that would break my heart?
Just you're a big Jackson Arnold. You're a big second chances guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now he's on his third, so good riddance.
I think a lot of Auburn fans have the similar mindset there. So Jackson Arnold, he is a year after making $1.5 million. He's not
Yeah.
going back in the portal. Maybe USF needs a quarterback next year under Brian Hartline. Horatio Fields, he's also going to enter the transfer portal, and that's one that that one hurt because that was a guy that we had heard really had become a leader in that wide receiver room and then had that injury, unfortunately, during the season, and now he's going to be on his way out. But that's somebody that, a lot of people were expecting big things from, so he now will be hitting the portal. You have defensive back Lane Gaines. He's also going in the portal. So those three are kind of the newest names. And then if you missed any of these from the end of last week, Perry Thompson, former 5-star receiver, he is going to enter the transfer portal. Caleb Wheatland, linebacker, he's going to enter the transfer portal. You have defensive lineman Antonio Coleman, and then defensive back Rayon Strader as well. So again, that's 7 guys for Auburn who have put their name in the portal as it stands right now.
Yeah, and also, too, Alex Goldrich will be hopping on Mac and Cube today at 7:30 as well, so we'll continue to hear from the Auburn head coach as he gets adjusted and does his little media run as far as just getting acquainted with everybody. But, he's a guy that, to me, I think it's a slam dunk. I've been very vocal on just where I think this Auburn program can be under Alex Goldrich because, again, like a lot of people – don't realize he was pulling the strings there at Tennessee offensively, Josh Heupel. And also, the head coaching job he did at South Florida. He's working what he had, and he brought some success down there. And, he's gone into the swamp. Now, granted, Florida wasn't that good, but still he's beaten SEC teams with some of the caliber talent that he had down there. And, it's just this is part of the process. You gotta the way that college football is and the way that college athletes – and college athletics is nowadays, you got to be able to flip the rosters quickly. Like, you have the capability with the transfer portal. Yeah, it's a smaller window than it was, the past couple seasons, but you're able to kind of get in and, like you said, just keep the guys that we know we can, and the ones that are going to, have already made their decision that they're going to hit the portal. We understand. Like, there's only, especially for Horatio Fields, Perry Thompson. I know Perry Thompson's situation. You come in so hyped. It's almost the perfect pairing. Like, it's you got Cam Coleman on one side, Perry Thompson on the other. And now you kind of look at this, you kind of look at the situation. All right, this receiver room, it's already stacked. A lot of guys. You got Eric Singleton coming over in the transfer portal. That room is already kind of limited. And his development, I'm not going to say was stunted, but as far as you can't just go out there, be 6'3", 220 and expect that, oh, yeah, it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
There's still some things that you have to, grow into as a receiver. So I don't necessarily think that this is a bad move. I think it's kind of one of those, he needs a fresh start somewhere where he can finally take that next step because, again, nobody questioned, even when, with us being in the state of Alabama, we know how talented he is. It's just maybe that opportunity needs to be somewhere else where he can put that talent on full display. So it's just the nature of where we are in society as far as college football. We know what the transfer portal does. Some people just need a fresh start somewhere else. Think about it this time last year. Jackson Arnold hitting the transfer portal, and again, we saw what we saw at Oklahoma, and we all kind of had that, or most of us had that same thought of, okay, if it works, he could look great. It didn't work. You feel free to hop into the transfer portal again to find out if it was. I put it like this: if I'm a quarterback and I'm in the transfer portal and I may not be SEC caliber, go to Incarnate Word because their track record of having a guy for a couple years or a season and shipping them on out to the greener pastures, they're hitting at a pretty good rate. Look at Connor Wigman. If he would have just stayed at Incarnate Word, he probably would have been the best quarterback down there for years to come. And then he goes from SEC to SEC down to the Incarnate Word. Again, goes back to the SEC. And, when you play at Kentucky, it is what it is. But I think that was more of a.
Are you thinking about Zach Calzada?
Yeah, Zach Calzada. My apologies. Yeah, I said Connor Wigman. He's at Houston.
He's at Houston, yeah.
Yeah, he's at Houston. Yeah, Zach Calzada. He jumped around the SEC and realized, yeah, maybe I'm just not that. Maybe I'm not that good. But he got money though, at least from the video he showed.
He did get money. He also is a horrible football player.
That too. But he got paid though.
He did. He got paid to suck, and that's capitalism at its finest, baby. The last thing I did want to say about Alex Golesh though is he did bring it up yesterday because I know some people. Some people were when we were talking about Notre Dame earlier. Oh, so is every team Are you going to make fun of every team for missing out on a bowl game or opting out of a bowl game, just like Auburn and Notre Dame? No, I will for Notre Dame, Iowa State, and Kansas State. They're all frauds, and they're all weak programs that don't want to go and compete, and I think that's embarrassing.
And what makes
I
me
will give
so
Auburn
mad,
more of a pass because
they didn't have a winning season.
Yeah,
and
but
their
also
players are gone.
you have a new coach. Yeah, your players are gone. Like, because I mean, that's what Alex Golich said. He said if we had gotten invited a week ago, we might have been able to put something together. But he said it's just not realistic. I understand people. Well, Pat yesterday was even if you have 40 players, you go out there and compete. When you're undergoing coaching changes and things like that, this is my opinion, I'm maybe going to cut you a little bit of slack. Like, I can understand where it'd be hard to rally the troops for something like that. But, yeah, no, Notre Dame, Kansas State, and Iowa, weak.
Right.
Weak.
And to that point, too, man, you know how tough it is to install during fall camp? Imagine, like,
Well, what, is he going to run Hugh Freeze's offense or something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Alex Goes comes in, all right, we're going to call, trips left 67, and everybody's like, what, huh? Like, wait a minute. This playbook looks a little different than it did, 2 weeks ago.
That actually would be an interesting experiment, though, to let a different coach run Hugh Freeze's offense and see if it was better or if it was just like, oh, no, these plays are just doo-doo. Like, whoever drew these plays up is just bad.
Right. Let's tell Derek Nix, hey, I need you back for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If you can get these guys good to go, we'll handle everything else. But that's tough. But to your point, too, Iowa State, Kansas State. But what's the point of going through this season, going through the highs and lows, being bowl eligible? Like, imagine these teams
winning a bowl game is supposed to mean like you're supposed to want to go and play and win one.
Imagine if you're UMass, you ain't win a single game. If somebody was like, "Hey, can you play in the Little Caesars Bowl?" Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, damn, go get like the little gift card or the swag bag, whatever they're gonna give you for the bowl. I mean, hey, you never like. I get to go somewhere nice and try. I don't know. Like, you might get to go to a nice little vacation destination,
exactly.
But I guess these people don't want to play, so it's sad. It really is sad. But we have your calls and texts coming in 205-834-9450. If you want to hop on the courtesy GMC text line, that's where we'll go next on Tuesday edition of Morning Jocks. Final few moments here on the Tuesday edition of Morning Jocks. Conrad and Damien here with you. McElroy and Kublik in the morning coming up here at the top of the hour. Going to get to your text here quickly. I did just want to give a shout out to Phillip Rivers because I thought this was a really cool story if you saw it last night. But Phillip Rivers, former NFL star QB, he is now the head coach of St. Michael Catholic here in Alabama, who just lost to Jackson in the semifinals of the state playoffs here recently. He is currently in conversation with the Indianapolis Colts to return to the National Football League. Now, it would be a practice squad spot, but Daniel Jones is out for the season. Who knows? Anthony Richardson's should just never play football again. Riley Leonard is currently their starting quarterback, but he's hurt. So Brett Ripon, if you remember that name, is, I guess, currently slated to be the backup there for the Colts. So Phillip Rivers potentially looking to make a return to the NFL at the age of 44. More power to him. But just interesting, a little bit of a local tie there. I saw that news yesterday. Thought that one was interesting. But let's head to the Courtesy GMC text line now as we will wrap things up with some of your comments from throughout the morning. Let's see. This one says, some schools had to pay a fine for opting out. Did the crying, no fighting Irish have to pay a fine? That's my question. Because, yeah, Iowa State and Kansas State had to pay $500,000. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that Notre Dame, no.
Right.
I could see someone saying, hey, you're going to have to pay the $500,000. Yeah, we're not going to do that. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
See you next year.
Because didn't Iowa State and Kansas State have to pay it to the Big 12?
I believe so.
Yeah, so because
so they're
Notre
not
Dame,
going to. Yeah, they're not going to be.
They have to answer to nobody.
Not going to be held accountable on that. Let's see. This says Alex Golish must have brought the Doge team to Freeze's overpaid roster. He saved about $3.5 million so far.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I mean, if you can save some bread, that's good. It's always a good thing.
Let's see. This says Auburn are cowards. They could have played a bowl game to go 5-8.
Okay.
I just read them. I just read them. This says, I wanted to see Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech as a Heisman finalist. I thought he had an incredible season. I know defensive players probably wouldn't win it, but thought that he earned a spot as a finalist. He's very good. No doubt about it. Very, very good. Let's see. Lewis chimes in. He says, hey, some things just break the right way. Alabama could beat 3 Heisman finalists and 1 winner. Just saying. If they were to win the national championship.
Yeah.
I'll let you hold on to that one, Lewis, if that makes you feel good. Anything's possible, though. What do I know? Let's see. This one says, will Diego Pavia get up to the podium and practice his speech before the ceremony?
Oh, boy. Just be careful if you're in the crowd. Something tells me if he wins, maybe he'll be able to read the room, but he does got a little.
I'm sure the camera people will show his mother the entire time he's speaking.
He's got some colorful language, too, so.
This one says, no Ty Simpson. I thought he was a front runner a couple weeks ago. Have you watched him the last couple weekends? That's why I didn't go that way. And somebody corrected me. I'm so sorry. They said, Conrad, there is football this weekend. We got the Army-Navy game.
Oh,
You're right. I completely forgot. I apologize. We're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. McElroy and Kublik in the morning.